Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, folks. So our audio and our video seems to be working. Good afternoon and welcome back to another Firestorm Studios live stream. My name is Pat, and today we're going to be continuing with the A to Z of our creature series in Zbrush. All right, so we are now at the letter Q, and we're going to be creating a Quetzalcoatlus, which is a pterosaur. So some prehistoric creatures today. And the first thing I want to do is shout out to Dr. Scott Hartman, who runs skeletaldrawing.com, and you can see the link there on the screen. He very kindly allows people to use his artwork for fair use, and free for use and fair use, really just as for educational purposes, really. So these are free to use, but please be sure to cite his name, okay? And as long as it's for educational, non-commercial purposes and such like that. Okay, so with that in mind, folks, let's get stuck in with this. I have some other reference as well. So that I've got off screen. So in that kind of, we're not going to be looking at any of those. I'm just going to keep the this skeletal drawing up as reference for myself and for anyone else who isn't maybe aware of what this creature looks like. All right. So let's get started. Now, with this one, I think Z-spheres. Hey, CC. So how are you doing? Thanks for coming along. How are we doing, folks? Okay, got a few more people coming in. Excuse me if I take a cup of tea, slurp a cup of tea there, folks. All right. So I think with this one, Z-spheres is definitely going to be the way forward, just due to the nature of it. And these are really crazy creatures. They're about the size of a giraffe. So they were one of the largest flying pterosaurs. So let's get started, folks. We're going to start off by creating ourselves a Z-sphere, dragging that out onto our canvas. And I think the first thing I want to do is I need to figure out where I want the beginning of my creature to be. So do I want this to be the head and then draw the rest of the Z-spheres down to create the rest of the body? Or do I want to maybe start this as the root, maybe the pelvis, and then draw our way up? That's something that you do always need to take into account when you are when you're building out your Z-sphere armatures. All right. So I think I'm going to go with this being the pelvis area. Okay. And I have this other reference image off to on my other screen where it's standing, because I think that's where that's how I'm going to kind of position this creature. So we're going to start off with drawing out the hips. Just grab the hips to indicate roughly where those legs are going to go. And we can always clean up the positioning once we get all the parts in place. So there we go. They're very strange creatures, but I do love them. They're very strange looking creatures. All right, so let's just knock out where the spine's going to go. So as a reminder, folks, the images that I'm using are from Dr. Scott Hartman over at skeletaldrawing.com. Please be sure to check them out. And like I say, they're free use as long as they are under educational use. That's what his website states. But the thing is, folks, whenever you're using someone's artwork, be sure that you get permission or check that their website that it's okay to use them for non-commercial purposes. Obviously, if you're using them for commercial purposes, you will have to license them. All right. And the kind of golden rule with this is just be polite. Just be polite. And be sure to cite and reference someone and give them the credit that they deserve for the work that they've created. I've used Dr. Scott Hartman's work in the past for other prehistoric style creatures. So he was a no-go, sorry, no-brainer really, when it came to creating this Quetzalcoatlus for me. So all right, well, let's just scale up that there. Again, I can always go back and edit this. I'm just trying to get the base proportions in here. And I'm going to draw out the feet here. And this is one of the things I love most about these creatures. They've got really flat feet. Any skeletal reconstruction I see of these creatures, they've got these great little flat feet like this that just stick out. They look quite comical, but I do find them quite amusing. So anyway, folks, I am rambling away. I'm rambling away as always, but it's really good to have you all joining me here for another live stream. And while we create probably one of my favorite prehistoric creatures. So we're going to now pull this out for the neck, which is incredibly long. It's going to look so weird, I know. It will look very weird, folks. Until, there we go. Let's just take our time a bit more with this skeleton. So let's see. We've got a little bit of the curve in the spine here. Like that, where we come to the neck. And we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and about 5 other joints in the neck. And they're all going to be of varying lengths just to kind of create that curve and get the length of the neck that we need. And then down here is where essentially our collarbone is going to be. So I think what I'll do is I'm just going to scale up this one like so. Just draw out what I need for the collarbone. Going to come down to about here, and we're just going to bring that out like so. In fact, I think what I'll do here is just give myself an extra little bit of flexibility in the shape there. And let's get those wings working out. There we go. All right. So let's see here. According to my reference, it looks as though I think I need to bring this all down a little bit. I need to rotate this. There we go. And then rotate the neck up. And maybe bring the arms down a little bit. I say the arms, but this is going to be the wings. I'm going to bring these down a little bit lower, like so. And bring that to about here. Because that's got to be a little bit lower than the back knee. And then we can draw out what is essentially going to be the wrist. And this is one of the really cool things about comparative anatomy, because you can take a look at a skeleton like this. So you can see here that what we're creating, we've got this section here. Let me just bring up the magnifying glass. So this bone here is this joint here. And you can see as I bring my way down the chain to about here, okay? And then if we get rid of our magnifying glass, we're essentially at the wrist area. And then the bone that has kind of morphed into the extension of the wing is, I think it's the pinky, I think. It's either the pinky or the index finger of on us that's kind of extended out to the full size of the wing. So for that, we're going to draw in just an extra knuckle here. Because remember, when you're doing Z-spheres, it's not about creating an exact copy of the skeleton, although it's a really good way to start, all right? It's a really good way to kind of start things. But it's probably a good idea to just give yourself the shapes and forms that you need. So just jump over to a little bit of reference here, figure out what these look like roughly from the side. Okay. So we're going to pull this down like so. And I think what I'll do is I'll try and keep the pose symmetrical, but quite give myself a little bit more flexibility if I want to change the overall positioning of the creature. And now let's get the really massive skull, get that in place as well. We'll drag that out. So let me know how you're doing, folks, on this this Monday morning. We want to know how everyone's keeping. We've got a fully stacked week for you, folks. I'll go over the streamers that we actually have this week a little bit later on. We'll go a bit more in depth with that. You can know what we've got coming along. All right. Now that I think we've got everything roughly in place, I just want to now just make sure that it's positioned the way I want. So I think I'll add in a Q cube and just give myself a bit of a ground plane. Not only is this going to act as my scene file, it's also going to give me somewhere to line up the rest of the joints. Just make sure they're working as they need to. Okay, that's looking okay. And I've got a bunch of other reference. Hey, Manic, how are we doing? Good to have you here. So I've got other reference here of different positions and poses of this creature, which is showing the wings and different parts in different proportions. Because remember, paleo art is obviously quite, it's an interpretation, the same as most art is, always an interpretation of something. So they're interpreting the bone structure and what we know about it anatomically and creating something that, that looks as as realistically as possible and as accurate as possible. That doesn't mean everything's perfect, but I always tend to stick to a single reference for the proportions. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and double check that I've got all the bones in the right place. I think I do. I'm just going to add another one in here just to match Dr. Hartman's images. And again, I really just want to make sure that I credit Dr. Hartman's work because it's an incredibly useful reference to have access to. Okay. Hey, Manic, you're doing pretty good. Good to hear. Yeah, I'm doing okay. Brain's a bit foggy today, if I'm being totally honest, Manic. Tripping over my words a lot this morning. Don't think I've had enough sleep. But what's new? All right. So we've got our our Z-sphere skeleton in place. I'm not sure how much we're going to get done today, but we'll do as best I can to get through as much possible. So we can maybe move on to the letter R on Friday. Who knows? All right, so that's fine. So I'm going to do my usual. I'm going to duplicate this, hide the first one, and we're going to do our first save. And I'm not going to type in the whole name of the of it. I'm just going to call it Quetz 001. So yeah, so Quetzalcoatlus is the name of the pterosaur that we are creating today. All right, so now that we've got that, I'm going to tap A to see what kind of model that's given me. And that's more than satisfactory to me. That's more than suitable. So we will go into the adaptive skin options and we'll choose preview. Now, what's happening with the default settings here is that we're actually getting Dynamesh. We don't want Dynamesh. We want to take that to 0 so that we're only getting a preview of polygons. And the reason I do this is it's just another level of control for the creature. So, or for the asset. So that means that I'm controlling the stage by stage settings of it. I'm not just putting Dynamesh on before I'm ready to create the Dynamesh, because what I might want to do is start blocking out the overall forms of the creature using the polygon mesh before I actually start doing the Dynamesh. So in that case, I'm going to leave the density at 2 and then hit Make Adaptive Skin and turn off Preview. Then go into the subtool list, go to Append, and then in my subtool list, I'll now have Skin Z-Sphere. So I can click on that and that's going to add it to the bottom of the list. I'll do a bit of cleanup now. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the second one because I don't need it anymore. But I think I'll keep this one around just in case I want to use it as a Z-Sphere rig. Okay. Now, I'm going to grab the move brush, make sure that I have symmetry turned on. And I'm going to turn my smooth options down a little bit and just go through and clean up some of the areas that are a little bit broken. We've actually done not too bad with this, but let's now start looking at the overall scale and size of this. So I'm immediately going to go in and start scaling up. First of all, let's move this forward. Smooth it out. And start shaping out the creature. Now there's a crest on the head. I'm going to add that later, I think. And honestly, folks, I don't know about you. I don't think I've made the neck long enough. I don't think I've made the neck long enough. No, not by a long shot. So let's take that neck and using the masking tool and the gizmo, we'll just move it into place. And I think all I'll do here is stretch it out till it looks like it's about right. That's better. Okay. Then we can go in and we're just going to smooth all this back. Just relax it. And then grab the move brush and move this back into place. Grab our Z modeler brush. Use that to insert a couple of edge loops. So we'll need to go into our geometry and delete the lower, because quite honestly, this is about as low as I want to go. And I'm just going to use the inflate brush just to inflate the neck a bit. And this is actually one of those areas, this is a good example of using the option to turn off the tablet pressure. So if you are using a brush that you want to create the same height or level or pressure of stroke right along a surface, then go into your preferences, under tablet, Romina Degotto, thank you very much for the subscription. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And turn off use tablet. And I've got it down here on my custom UI. And also, folks, here's something that I just want to kind of put out there as a question to generally the Firestorm community. Would you prefer seeing the default ZBrush UI? I personally prefer using my custom UI, but if it's helpful for certain people, then we could, of course, consider doing that to make it a bit easier for everyone. But with just to let you know, we do have an upcoming beginner class tutorial series of ZBrush coming up from Firestorm Studios. So that's just something to be aware of, okay? So keep an eye out for that. I'm not sure when it will be released, but it is something that's in the pipeline. Romina, thank you very much for the subscription. We appreciate it. Thank you. But as always, folks, if there's any queries or questions about ZBrush or the industry, Maya, it doesn't really matter. If you have a question, put it into the chat and I will do my best to answer it, okay? Also, folks, I am now become very aware that I speak with my hands a lot, thanks to one of our reels that came out of me doing the 6-7. So there you go, Mario, you can put it back in if you want. Or you can make me juggle, I don't mind. So anyway, back to what I was saying. If you turn off use tablet, what that's going to do is it's going to take away any pressure sensitivity, which means that whatever you would set your brush to, so in this case 3, as I start to sculpt with that, I don't have to worry. If I push down as hard as I can onto my tablet, I'm always going to get the same thickness right along. And it's something I use all the time to keep my meshes consistent, okay? Now, that's looking okay. So let's now I need to kind of do a little bit of a look around my reference, try and get a good shot of the body. There we go. Right. So there's a chance we're probably going to have to bring the arms out a little bit further, but that's okay. So I'll just mask them, invert, and then I'm going to reset my gizmo and just move those out to there. That's looking good. We've lost a bit of the sharpness in the elbow. That's okay. We're going to reintroduce all this. Don't worry about that stuff. Get comfortable with the ugly part of your model because it's going to be there for a while. And again, I'm just using the inflate brush here, and I'm going to turn my tablet back on so that I can adjust that a little bit more. And I'm just bringing the body scale up to where I need it to be. The legs appear to be very skinny. They don't have a lot of meat on the legs. So again, switch over to use tablet and now just add that into the arms. It's a little bit thicker. They've got a little bit more meat on on their arms, but most of that appears to be more of the kind of skin, you know, for the wing itself. So there's an area from the shoulder down to the first elbow, and then obviously the main wing section, which actually appears to go into here, into this area round about there. And this is more for myself, really, folks. The way I'm kind of explaining this, it's actually just for myself as much as for you. Because remember, folks, the rule for these A to Z sessions is that I'm not allowed to do any work other than reference collection for these creatures. And then as soon as we come in to the live stream, we sculpt it cold. So I'm not sure why I chose this. I think it was really just I think it's primarily to just show you all the thought process that can happen. And if something goes really wrong, how do we fix it? And how do we get ourselves out of it? So I'm just now using really low polygon meshes to indicate where I know the lats are going to go, and really just shape out this creature. There's going to be a bit more of a wishbone. They do appear to have wishbones, so similar to our modern day birds. Same as all dinosaurs, actually, or most dinosaurs, I believe. Gonna have to fix the feet. Look, all the lovely feet that we had that were completely flat. Now they're bent. Terrible. Okay. Let's get those back into position. Go to the move. I'm actually going to grab my Z modeler brush and just delete the edge loops there. That's just going to make my life a bit easier. And their feet shape is, they are quite wide, but they're very flat. So let's bring back our, there we go. So you can see that as we've adjusted that, we've lost a little bit of the height. So let's bring that back in, just mask out the foot. Bring our gizmo down, and all I'm doing here to bring this gizmo down is holding the Alt key and tapping on the surface. So if my gizmo's up here and I can't see it, just hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and tap on your model, and the gizmo will automatically go to that place on the model and align to it. And then to straighten everything up, just again hold Alt and click on this reset orientation option. Okay. And another thing you'll see me do is hit this kind of Google Maps style icon. This is just, again, it's location. So what this is actually doing is, if I have symmetry on, it's centering my gizmo to an unmasked area. So if I do that, it's going to center it on this foot. And because we are using symmetry, it's going to make sure that it positions it in the middle of each foot. If I turn off symmetry and do that, it's going to put it into the middle of our origin. So with that in place, I can do a little bit of extra work. Just start to block out the body, and we're going to spend a lot of time in this this mode. Okay. Bring up the back a bit. There we go. Oh, I forgot to turn symmetry on. Oops. So I'm going to undo all that. Chat seems a bit quiet today. It is. The chat is very quiet today, but that's okay. If people wish to talk, they can. If they don't want to, they don't need to. It is a Monday, to be fair. It is Monday. Everyone's just, I always imagine that everyone is just kind of chilling on Mondays, particularly as you get to the afternoon. You just want it to be over, right? I'd love to talk, but I'm at work. Exactly. That's another thing. Some people are just listening in, and that's okay, folks. I don't mind. I know you're all out there. I know you're all out there. Okay. And again, folks, I'm going to sound like a kind of stuck record here, but this is why I really push the low polygon approach. And if you're curious where this kind of system came from, I say system, it's just a method of working which you don't need to follow, by the way. It's just a recommendation that you work in this way. Because of the nature of ZBrush, it can be very easy to it can be very easy to create lumpy models if you work at high resolutions too early. And it's a very quick way to put yourself off working in a program like Zbrush. And this also goes for any sculpting program. If you sculpt in Blender, 3D Co, Mudbox, Modo, right? If you sculpt in any of these packages, even things like Nomad Sculpt and things on the iPad, it's quite a good idea that if you're just starting out is to work at lower resolutions, make it more manageable for yourself, and you won't end up with lumpy forms, okay? But it was an artist called Zach Petrock, who I believe still works for Disney. And he's somewhat of a legend in the sculpting world, digital sculpting world and practical sculpting world, I believe. And one of the first workshops I ever watched on sculpting in Zbrush was from him, and it was about modeling the human form. And he started off in Maya with a really low polygon, really low polygon human base mesh, and it was all just blocked out of quads. And it really, really showed me how useful that is to have that level of structure in an asset, really. Let alone doesn't really matter what you're making. If you're making a stylized character, if you're making a realistic human, you want to have that structure. I still don't think that the neck is long enough. No, I don't think it is. I also think that there might be some of the reference images have a skin going between, like the skin going down part of the leg. I wonder, see if I have any other reference image here. Oh, sorry, I've missed the true dat. Mondays are the first day back to work. Pretty happy I was able to end my day at work on time today. Well, that's good. That's something at least, Manic. I'm glad. I also keep forgetting that the time difference between you're literally finishing your work while, we're right in the middle of ours. I hate time zones. I get them. I understand why they exist, but they're a pain. Okay, yes, it looks as though I found another paleo art image here, and it would appear that the skin for the arm, oh, what happened there? Goes, for the wing even, it goes right to the end and then comes down and actually attaches to the knee. So I think that's something I might apply maybe nearer the time that we are, because it's really weird because it's going to be really in a strange fold because of how I have the wing. That's actually going to be quite difficult to do. But we'll get there. We will get there, folks. What's this? I remember Scott Eaton would make a base skeleton to make in his anatomy course. Yes, Scott Eaton's another amazing sculptor. I've taken his facial anatomy course, and it's just outstanding. I learned so much from that course. And this is the thing. What I love about Scott's approach is that I remember I went to a talk that he at a convention once, and he explained on stage. He was like, "Right, I don't know anything about ZBrush." Well, what he said is, he said, "I don't know all the tools." He says, "I know what I need to know in order to get my job done." And Scott is a sculptor by, that's his main focus. He's not, he doesn't appear to be one that's like, "Oh yeah, let's get into all the nitty gritty of the tech," because it's not about that for him. It's about creating the artwork and creating accurate artwork. So for him, the tools, it doesn't matter what tool he's using as long as it can help him create the art that he needs. And his approach to sculpting in ZBrush was very different from something I'd seen before. But it didn't matter because you're learning about form and structure. So yeah, it was really cool, and I think it's a great thing to hear from such established professionals that you don't need to know every single tool and button. As long as you can do your job, that to me is the most important thing. So we've got a little bit of a weird kink here in the mesh. I think the easiest way to fix this is go in and just delete that edge loop and then reshape all this. There we go. Okay. That's not 100% accurate at the moment, but I'm just kind of putting that in place to make my life a little bit easier later on. And I think I'm going to do another, I'm going to scale the head up again, just a little bit. Here we go. Have a quick look. There's a full reconstruction of it, and I'm just nowhere near the size the head needs to be. God, that's mental. Well, this weekend I actually, speaking of mental, it reminded me of Mental Ray, which is a renderer I used to use to render out a lot of my projects when I was first starting out in the industry. And I was looking at older pieces of work to add to my ArtStation for teaching aids and teaching examples. And yeah, I came across three pieces of work that were all rendered in Mental Ray, which then sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole to find out if it's still available. And then I realized that I forgot that NVIDIA had discontinued it, which is a shame. I know it was never considered a great renderer, but it was what we had. so we lived with it. So we lived with it, but yeah. Right, let's see. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to now bring in Scott Hartman's image here and just roughly line up his image with mine to see how close I am. I would say I'm not too bad, but that's the head size. What about the body? Let's see. It's not the most accurate way of doing this, but it does tell me that the neck needs to be at least twice as long at that scale, roughly. But let me just scale the body down and see if I can, because I think the head is too, I think I've got this is a bit of a mix, but yeah, okay. I would say I'm more or less there within, okay, but the neck does need to be another, let's call it 10%. Let's call it 10%. And again, this is the thing, folks. It's an interpretation of the creature, of an extinct creature. So we're not going to be too hard on ourselves if we don't get it 100% correct. Let's just invert that, move that out, and there we go. Okay. We have a question. What is your preferred renderer for personal projects? Okay, so for me, I tend to gravitate towards Arnold, just simply because I have that in Maya, and it's an excellent renderer. It is quite slow in comparison to some other things, but it does give you exceptionally good quality. However, in the last, for this actual creature series, I've gravitated towards Marmoset Toolbag as my go-to renderer, primarily because of its speed. So for these quick studies, these quick sketches, if you will, I am gravitating more towards something a bit faster, like Marmoset, but that also gives me a really good quality output from the renderer. And then for larger projects and something that's maybe a little bit more advanced, I would go towards Arnold. So yeah, Arnold and Marmoset tool bag. Those are my two go-tos. I really enjoy using V-Ray, but I've never been able to justify purchasing it because I have access to Arnold. Even though if you were to, you know, put a gun to my head, I would say that V-Ray is definitely the one I prefer using on a day-to-day basis. I find it far more user-friendly than Arnold is. This is true. We don't really know how exactly dinos looked. It's approximation. See, the best example is the hippo skull. Yes, the hippo skulls are terrifying. They're absolutely terrifying. Okay, folks, I think today we're going to be doing a longer stream. I think today's going to be a longer stream. Because we're 45 minutes in and I am not anywhere close to where I want to be. So I'm getting there, but not quite there yet. So mainly because I keep yapping, which doesn't really help matters, does it now? Get that symmetry back on. Kind of fix up some of the shape here. Looks like we're missing a bit, so I'm going to do a quick mirror and weld. There we go. Ah, okay, so something went wrong here at the back. So when I do a quick mirror and weld, we get this. Okay. And again, I'm not going to worry, or I rarely worry about little bits like this, because I know that eventually I will dynamesh this together. So it's not the end of the world. Okay. Let's just soften that out. There we go. All right. I think what I'll just do for the time being is I'm going to add in, I'm going to append a polysphere. And then with that selected, scroll down to initialize and just turn that into a Q sphere. And then we can bring that to the crest, scale it up, and just scale that down, like so. Bring it into the head. Go. Then using the symmetry tool, make sure we've got symmetry on. Sometimes a bit tricky with, there we go, smaller objects. And then I'm just going to get the crest in place. And maybe subdivide it once as well, just to give me a little bit more control over the shape. Maybe needs to be a bit smaller. Just again, I'm sure this is all very, you know, varied depending on each particular one. There we go. That's looking kind of cool. All right. So are we ready to dynamesh, or do we want to subdivide a bit more and then refine? Not sure yet. That's where my gut feeling is, that I want to do a bit more refinement. Let's see, how thick is the neck? I really think that I had that right. There we go. Because it makes sense to me that the top of the neck would taper out just to support the skull. God, these are so weird. They're such weird looking creatures, so they are. We grab the inflate brush, use tablets off anyway, so that's fine. And just thicken out the form. And that's another thing, folks, is another reason that I have use tablet turned on, is that I turned on or off and it's on my UI, is that when I'm modeling things like this, sometimes I prefer not having pressure sensitivity, because it makes me feel as though I'm back in Maya. when I'm moving points around. Because there's a mode in Maya called tweak mode that allows you to move vertices the exact same way you can in ZBrush. And I used to have the use tablet set to a hotkey, and it's not something I really brought up. And then I kind of realized, I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'm just taking this, I'm taking this completely for granted. Just something I do. I thought maybe I should start sharing that that's something that I use quite frequently. Let's just get that up like so. Yeah. Now, what's kind of cool about these is that their eyes are actually right at the back of the skull. So I'm going to pop that in now. I'm going to go to, generally I normally will append the eye manually and then tweak the size, etc. But if you go up to macro, you can go under macros and choose append eyes. And what that will do is it's going to add in a set of eyes for you that are already set to the toy plastic material and colored black, like so. And let's get that into place. And I think we can all admit that the model is now finished and that we can all go home. I mean, look at that. If that is not the most glorious looking Quetzalcoatlus you've ever seen. Look at the size of the eye. Quick, vote now in the chat if you want me to just stop. And we'll just leave it at this. And this is what we'll post. You know, this is this weird, adorable, elongated chicken. So there we go. Anyway, folks, right, let's 1010 model, no notes. Thank you very much, Apple Shampoo. I appreciate that. Elongated chicken. I'm an elongated chicken. Sorry. I was going to kind of burst into song there, but I didn't. I thought I'll not kind of submit the Firestorm Studio community to that. All right. Okay, so we do have our elongated chicken, which is, I think, what I'm going to call this from now on. I'm going to go into dynamic perspective mode here, so that I can start figuring out if this looks right. I do have, there's a natural history reconstruction of Quetzalcoatlus, and that to me looks like the most realistic interpretation. It looks like a real animal, so I'm using that a lot as reference here. So I'm trying to figure out where we're going to have to subdivide one so that I can start blocking out some of the form in the face a bit. So oh, I'm sorry, that's too funny. We need to turn the eyes off, otherwise I'll never get anything done, because that's too amusing to me. But you know what? Let's start Dynameshing, shall we? Let's stop messing around and get Dynameshing. So delete lower, merge these two down. So we're going to merge down, hit OK. Then I'm going to go to save as Quetz 2. Yeah, that's it. Elongated chicken moving forward. You need to save this as a version before you change them too much. Okay, right. Well, let's do that, shall we? We're going to save this version. We're going to call it Quetz 2, and then I'll just do a little addendum to it and call it elongated chicken. Like so. And then we'll do save as and do version 3. So he is now safe. Our elongated chicken is now safe in this mode. You're welcome. You're welcome. You might actually make a really funny 3D print, actually. So let's jump in now to Geometry, Dynamesh, and we're going to change. Okay, so a little bit more detail on Dynamesh for you. If you're doing a creature or a character, then generally I find putting the subprojection down to 0 works better. You can also leave it at default. if you're dynameshing something like a prop or an environment, then push that subprojection up to 1. At 1, it's going to do a better job of keeping hold of those sharp corners. So yeah, simple as that, really, folks. And without it, it's not really going to hold on to it, and it's going to smooth and average everything out. I'm going to turn blur off and hit Dynamesh. And you can see that's way too high. Okay, it's way, way too high. We're already up at 230. At the moment, we have 874 polys. Points, actually. I don't think this is polys. Let me see. Let me see. Hover over. Yeah, it's 872 polys for this character. So we don't need that much. So we're going to go back in here. We're going to drop the resolution. We're going to keep dropping it. That looks pretty good to me. That'll work. So with that done, I'll do a quick mirror and weld. Turn off the dynamic perspective. And now we can start sculpting our character. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into my damn standard brush. And I'm going to start outlining with Sculptris Pro on where I want. Actually, let's see if we can do it without Sculptris Pro. Yeah, that's okay. So it appears as though we have a bit of form coming around here to where the eye roughly goes, which is in about here. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn the eye. See, I got, good. So I got the eye pretty much in the right place. I'm just going to make it really small. Somehow it's just making it look a bit cuter than intended, but whatever. Let's see how that looks. And we also have a bit of shape coming down here. And then the jaw is going to come in round about here, up to there. And then the beak separates about here and goes right down the middle. We're running out of space there, but that's not too bad. And because they are flying animals, they have a large cavity. And I couldn't tell you what the cavity is called. All right, I don't know what it's called, but essentially it's this cavity here. So if we go to magnifying glass, it's this one here, okay? You can see it's just in front of the eye and it's this huge gap in the skull. I would hazard a guess, it's obviously to lighten the size of the skull, and I imagine they can use it to, make noise. It might create, a kind of resonance in the nose. So for that, with that in mind, I am going to now sculpt that shape down, because that shape creates a new form on the creature, which comes down to about here. And it is definitely connected to the nostril. I know that. It is definitely something to do with the nostril. So we're going to make sure that this all works as it should. But you can see we're already running out of geometry here. Let's just lower that down. And we'll get the eye back in a minute. We're just going to fill that out. And then we have this part at the front here. I'm going to pull down. So I guess it's similar. They must assume that there must be something like like pelicans, how they've got they can eat huge things, because their beaks kind of swell underneath, because it's not like solid all the way. And I wonder if that's what they have, all the smart people, all the smart paleontologists have like, yep, this is definitely what they had. Like, cool, I can go with that. It looks awesome. So, bring a, oh, I've lost my pressure sensitivity. There we go. So now I can, and again, folks, just to be that stuck record, look how fast we've been able to get something that looks like a real animal just by blocking out our forms, taking our time at the beginning, and it just saves you so much time. And I'm probably going to smooth back the jaw here, the opening here, so that we can add a bit more resolution and get the shape right. But there we go. That's going to be quite sharp coming in here. There we go. How are we doing, folks? Okay, we have hit the 1 hour. Wow, Adrian PZ3D, thank you very much for the follow. Very much appreciated. All right, folks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take we're going to stop briefly. We're not going to take a break at this point. I'm just going to stop briefly and bring up this here. This is the live stream that we have for this week. So that I got it right, and so that you can write it down if you wish, there we go. I decided to just pull in our actual post. So today, obviously, we are doing our A to Z of creatures, and tomorrow at the same time, Heather, our founder and director, is going to be doing 3D character creation. Wednesday, we have Holly Watt with her continuing her Maya environment series. Then Wednesday evening, we have Peter Ocampo. He's going to be coming in and creating more concepts and kind of answering your questions about that. Then we have animation on Thursday with Paige Imperial. Before Friday, you have me again, same time, either working on the next stage of this Quetzalcoatlus, or depending on how much we get done today, we might be working on the letter R. And then to round out the week, we have Andre on Saturday, who is just doing his ZBrush and Chill series. Okay, so that is what you can look forward to from Firestorm Studios and the live streaming schedule. So let's jump back in. And I think what we'll do is we'll take a short break at maybe hour and a half. So let's work for another half an hour. And then I'm going to take a quick break, grab a drink, and then we'll continue on. So let's see how much we can get done in the next half an hour or so. No, is that? Yes, it is. We are getting some shape there. So I'm just going to start bringing in some of the anatomy, smooth off some of this. Go. I want to keep quite a sharp center line just where that wishbone is. And you can see that we've already done a fair amount of what's needed. Not much left to do here. It is looking very blocky, I'll give you that, but it's almost all there. Maybe knock the rib cage back a little bit, it's maybe a bit sharp. And let's now add a bit more width to the thighs. A bit more shape. And let's take a look now. We're going to start bringing, trying to reintroduce some of that sharpness that we had on the wings. So I'm going to start off by first just inflating these sections here on the arms. And I really think we just don't have enough resolution there, do we, folks? So what we'll do is I'm going to mask them out, invert them, hit Control D once, and that way I don't have to use Sculptrush Pro I don't have to re-dynamesh. I get a little bit more geometry to play with. And that just makes things that little bit easier for me. What I love is as well is that when you look at prehistoric animals, you can really start to see where some myths came from. You know, you can imagine if they found a skeleton like this, that they would think it was a dragon. Or I can't remember the exact name for a dragon that doesn't have, that's just got wings. I know that there's distinctions, but I don't know what that difference is. If someone in the chat wants to enlighten me, then I will happily take that info. So I'm now just going to start straightening up the form a bit. There we go. And then take the trim dynamic even, and just start flattening these. Because looking at the reference, it looks as though there's so little muscle on them. And all their limbs are very, very spindly, which I guess makes sense because they need to be light as possible so they can fly. So I take the standard brush here, just work that up to here for the elbow. There we go. Do a bit of reshaping. Get a little bit of the deltoid in here. Oh, a little bit more than that, I think. I'm not getting a huge amount. There we go. We want to add in some muscles, but we don't want it to be like really, really jacked. Okay, it looks as well as though for the traps, we've got something that's... Okay, so the traps seem to come up like so. Again, I am trusting a lot of the anatomy here to obviously paleo art and paleontologists because it just makes sense to do so. Okay, and I know that these creatures do tend to feature a lot in kind of fantasy. People kind of use them a lot for that as like a basis for other creatures. I'm wanting to go along more of a realistic route for this one. Okay. Okay, a little bit more work on the top. How are we doing? Okay. 8 minutes in. Just double check there definitely is something weird with well, not weird, but just something I have to be very aware of with the beak. Try and keep that at the right size. But as I'm sure some of you have found, when you're sculpting or even modeling objects that come to very fine points, it can actually be quite challenging to work with. So just take your time. And generally, when in Zbrush, you will find that the less polygons and less geometry you have, sometimes it can be harder to get that nice clean point. But it's a bit of a catch-22 because in order to stop it from being too lumpy, you can't have too many. But in order to get a nice clean point, you still need to add fair amount. So you've got to find that balance depending on the creature that you are making. What's this? Arconium log, long dino. Yes, exactly. Yeah, this is quite the creature, this one. So it is. Okay, so that's where the eye is going to go. That is in this bit. This whole area here needs to be this cavity. So there we go. Right. Okay. We're going to grab the move brush again, get the AccuCurve out, and remember, AccuCurve is going to give us a much finer fall off when we're moving elements of our model. So if we do have something that's like a bony appendage or a bony landmark, these are excellent for creating those kind of forms, just nudging things into a better shape. I'm just going to see if I can find some reference for the back legs, because they are very strange. And there's not a lot of reference for them. Okay, it looks like they have 4 toes. So let's go in here and let's start with the feet. I'm going to take the feet and we will start spreading them out. We're going to do a similar, I think what we'll do is a similar technique to the one that we used with the penguin. And if you didn't see that live stream, you can watch the replay over on our YouTube channel, and you'll find a link to that below this video. You'll find a QR code that you can scan that's going to take you to all of our social media links, and there's also individual links as well. So be sure to check those out. And while you're down there, why don't you follow our Discord? Romina D'Agotto. Just saw on Insta, you're going to be doing portfolio reviews. Can you tell us more about when and where? Okay, yeah, certainly. So the post that you will have seen is actually from a very recent review that we did last Thursday. And that was with Heather, Pete, and myself. And we generally try to do a review session once a month. But at the moment, they're every couple of weeks. And all you have to do if you want to have your work reviewed is to head over to the Discord, the Firestorm Studio Discord, and in there you'll find a channel that's going to allow you to post your work, and not privately. So the only people that can see your portfolio that you're submitting is myself and other members of the team. So you can post without worry. And then what we will try and do is the next time we do a review session, we just go through the list and we pull in the all the submissions. We do try to get through as many as possible, but we are limited to about a 2-hour window. So sometimes we don't always get through everyone. For example, on Thursday there, we only managed to get through 6, and we certainly had more submissions than that. And it is just a simple case of the time needed to do it. But please do make sure to join the Discord and hand it in there, Romina. And yes, hopefully we'll be able to review your work. It would be great to do so. So thank you very much for the support. And as of when the next one is, I don't know. I'm really not sure. The only way you'll be able to kind of keep track of that is to keep an eye on the Firestorm Studio socials over on the Discord. And if you want to, you can always ask questions again, because I believe that we do them as often as possible, but it's all to do with scheduling. Okay. And if as of from where, it will be right here on the Firestorm Studio channel and over on our YouTube channel as well. Okay. So you're welcome. You're welcome. So all I'm doing is, they've got quite simple feet by the looks of it. I'm just going to do that. And do you know what we're going to do, folks? Do you know what we're going to do? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this as Quetz 4. And we're going to load in our penguin and we're going to steal his feet. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with doing this, folks. This is just one of those things. So I've brought in my penguin. So this is the penguin that we did. We did this penguin on Friday in one session. So he's not too bad. He's a bit shiny, but he's getting there. He's also posed, so I need to open up a previous version of him. Let's see if we can get a version where he isn't posed yet. There we go. That'll do. So another thing as well, I mean, I can of course kind of release this penguin if anyone wants to, you know, I don't know, I personally think it isn't morally correct to steal a penguin's feet. He needs them. Well, I mean, he's doing a good service. He's allowing us to speed up the process of making our Quetzalcoatlus. So I think he'd be okay with it. I hope he'd be okay with it. So I'm going to take the penguin's foot here, go back to my my Quetzalcoatlus, and I'm going to go to append and just pop those feet in. Now, there we go. There's the foot there. Now I can just grab that, bring it down, and this will allow me to create the foot way faster than doing it from scratch. And this is something that you should be aware of doing. So if you are modeling things and you're modeling lots of different assets and creatures, keep them in a library. You know, you never know when you, say for example, you spend a day modeling out a creature or a character, or maybe sculpting an ear or a nose, or even making something like a hard surface prop. So say you are making a screw or a nut, or you know, a laptop, a box, a padlock. It really doesn't matter what it is that you're making. If it's something that you think might take you long, like a fair amount of time to make again, you know, particularly if you make a really good one, you can then pull that back in and reuse the same asset. It's a very efficient use of your time. I rarely do it on these streams, but it is something that I wanted to kind of showcase here. Now, obviously, as I said, the Quetzalcoatlus has got four toes, so we need to do some surgery on this. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take the foot, turn on Sculptures Pro, and I'm going to smooth back. Oh, I have subdivision levels on this. Wait a minute. Let me just fix that. Delete higher. There we go. Make it a bit smoother for myself. Smooth that back. And then I'm going to pull the toe section like this on both sides. I'm going to take the center part and invert that mask, move it to the side, extend it out, and just move it to over here. And do a bit of smoothing, like so. Then I'm going to do a mirror and weld. Ah, okay, not where I wanted to do it. Hold on 2 seconds. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take the foot, go into Subtool, scroll down, and I'm looking for, oh, my apologies folks, sorry. It's under Geometry, Position. I'm going to change the X to 0. That's going to move that in there, and when I hit mirror and weld, I'll get something like this. Now, that's not perfect yet, so what I'll do is I will take this and just move it to the side and keep pressing mirror and weld. And then I can alter the overall foot shape. Just rotate that in a bit. There we go. And do mirror and weld again. And there we go. We instantly have a Quetzalcoatlus foot. Is it perfect? No, it is not. Was it a crime against penguins to steal one's foot and turn it into this? Well, that's something I'll answer for when I leave this mortal coil. Please sound out in the comments if you think I'm going to hell for chopping off a penguin's foot. A digital one, mind you, just this FYI. I shouldn't have to say this, but I am joking, of course. We have to say that these days, just in case. There we go. And we'll just reshape it. Well, folks, I have to thank you all because coming on and doing the stream has kind of fixed a bit of the brain fog I had today. I keep, today I kept like missing words out in sentences and things like that. Trying to explain things. I was talking to my neighbor and, I said a sentence and they were like, what? I was like, oh, wait. And I'd forgotten like 6 or 7 words in the sentence. My brain was just running far too quickly for what it is I wanted to say and the mouth couldn't keep up. So, yeah. So if I've said anything that hasn't made much sense today, I apologize. Okay. Right. All right. So I think I'm just going to add in a little bit of indication as to where the bones of the foot are going to go. That looks pretty close. Let me just do a little bit of adjustment to the length. It looks as though got a bit more of a length here on the foot, and then a bit wider as well. Just at the ankle, and then smooth that back. And I think as well, I'll finish it by bringing in the claw here. There we go. That looks way better. Okay, and now I can reshape the heel a bit better. There we go. All right, let's position this. And how are we doing for time? Oh, 20 minutes. So after we've streamed for about an hour and a half, as I said, I'm going to do a quick 5-minute break or so, or a few minute break, just enough for me to make a new cup of tea. There we go. I'm just going to pop those in there. What I will do is though, to get rid of the penguin feeling of them, let's fill them with white. There we go. And I will just duplicate that across, merge into one subtool, and we've got the toes. Okay, let's have a look at the reference. Let's see. How am I doing with the wing length? I actually think I'm okay with that. That appeared like this bone here, or this couple of bones doesn't. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, I'm telling a lie. That should be a little bit higher up. Okay, so it looks like, yes, this should actually be much further out than it should be much higher than the body. So all we'll do here is I'm going to take the transpose line here, drag it out. Then I can go into move and just shift this whole thing up like that. That's better. Looks like we're going to have to resize the base a little bit as well. So let's do that now. Just get that a bit bigger. Get those feet on. Okay. I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping now, folks. Eyes. Feet. And body. And I'm just going to call that skeleton. So, all right, you can see the difference now in the skeleton. In fact, there's probably not much point in keeping it, but I will keep it anyway because I can always resize it and turn it into a rig if I want to. later on. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to do a new Dynamesh. But this time I'm going to go to Geometry, Dynamesh, and I'm going to use this picker button. I'm going to click on it and drag it over to the arm, because that's a good level of topology for me. And then I'm going to hit Dynamesh again. And what that's done is it's went and applied the same amount of density that we had in the arm and applied it to the rest of the body. So what I'm going to do now is take my trim dynamic, and I need to do a little bit of work here on these parts. Maybe a bit of an inflate. And looks like that overlaps quite a bit, so need to shape that out a little bit. Just using the trim dynamic to kind of get the right curve. There we go. And then potentially using the mask tool, get this the way we need to. We can just move this like so. There we go. Re-Dynamesh. And we're cooking with gas. Perfect. Okay. So again, for anyone that's new to the stream, the A to Z series was actually suggested by one of our other streamers, Holly Watt, as a good way to kind of go through, things to create in ZBrush. So we take the alphabet and we pick a letter. Well, we go through the alphabet. As we get to each letter, we create an animal or a creature or cryptid, mythological, fantasy, from anything really, just a critter from somewhere beginning with that letter. And that is essentially how it works. And like I said earlier, the only thing we can do is look up reference prior to the day. We can't do any practice sculpts or anything like that. We just have to go in and sculpt it cold. Okay. Depending on the one that we do, so for example, for the Mothman, I did work in between times, and I've done it for a couple of other ones as well, just to get us further along to speed things up a bit. Okay. Because ideally, I don't want this to take a year to do. I'd like to get this done before, I'd like to complete the series before the holiday season. That would be my goal for this. Okay, so now let's take the body here and just do polygroup. This is just going to let me put in a little bit of extra form. I think we're getting there, folks. I'm not going to lie. This is actually looking much better than I'd expected it to look at this early stage. Okay, we are coming up on an hour and a half, folks. So the last thing we're going to do here is, or actually, you know what? No, we'll do that later. I was going to connect the feet, but we'll do that later. What I will do though is I'm going to cut off the old feet. So we're going to take the body, we're going to choose the knife curve and just cut those feet off. Apparently that's just what I'm doing today. I'm cutting off animals' feet. So then I can take the feet that we made with the penguin and just readjust those. Smooth out the legs, the transition. And then when we get to that point, we will Dynamesh them into the rest of our model. Well, that's where our knee is, round about there. I'm just going to take my damn standard and just indicate where the hinge is. And that's going to help me place a calf muscle. It's going to look ridiculously large until I start smoothing it back. There we go. And let's give him a little bit of a butt. Go. And let's do a little bit of cleanup here up in the head. Just smoothing it all back, getting ready for the next layer of form and detail. All right. Okay, folks. So, like I said, I am going to take a little break for a few minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, just enough so that I can go and make a new cup of tea. And then we will be back and we will continue sculpting our Quetzalcoatlus, hopefully be able to get it to a point where it's either fully sculpted or ideally, I would quite like to be able to paint it today, but we only have 3 hours, so we've only got an hour and a half left. And I think we're far enough along. Oh, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, but thank you very much for the follow. Lux, I'll call you Lux. So thank you very much for the follow, Lux. So yeah, I think we've gotten far enough with this that we're probably going to move on to another letter at the end of the week. So this might be one of those ones that we just sculpt today, and then I'll paint and render it a little bit later. All right, folks, I will be back shortly. All right, folks, and we're back. Let me know if anything's gone wrong with the audio since I've been gone. um, and I went for coffee rather than tea. So if I suddenly get far more hyper, you'll know why. Yeah, black coffee. Wow, there we go. That's hitting the spot already. All right, let's get stuck in, folks. Let's get stuck in. So something I wanted to point out that's happened here is the more that we've Dynameshed, what happens with it is that it tends to redistribute. That's what it's essentially doing. It's redistributing the same amount of polys, or a certain amount of polys, across the whole surface. And for the most part, that's going to be fine. But if you have any areas that are particularly thin, what can happen is something like this, where we just get a twisted mess of geometry. Good. Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, CC. We get this mess of topology, which isn't great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use the inflate brush to kind of bring that a little bit wider than it should be. And then I'm going to try and re-Dynamesh this. So we'll go to geometry, hit Dynamesh again, and there we go. Now, I know that looks a bit weird, but we'll deal with it later. It's better to have, yeah, team coffee. Honestly, I'm more of a tea drinker, Romina. But today, definitely need a bit more focus, so the coffee had to come out. So we will fix that a little bit later. I don't know if the wings are supposed to be bent like this. There is a joint in them. A lot of the artwork I've seen, they do have this, they do seem to give them this ability to bend, but I don't think I like it too much. So I think I'm going to fix that. I'm just going to, it looks like it's going straight back. So I'm going to just do this. There we go. There we go. Maybe bring in the inflate brush again, just add that up a bit. Yeah, so coffee for me is like an emergency thing. But yeah, I'm a avid tea drinker. All right, just little tweaks here to the overall surface. And I think now I'm at a position where I want to start adding a bit more to the, I think I'm going to leave the body as it is, and then let's now focus on the head for the rest of the time being. See if we can get some more detail into the head, and then we can start thinking about retopology or z-remeshing and bringing it all together. And obviously we don't have the wings in yet, I'm aware of that. So I'm still trying to think of the best way that I want to do that. So yeah, we'll do the head a little bit and I'll have a think. I'll have a think about it. So let's just make sure the eyes are underneath. That's fine. And I'm going to do the same trick I did before. I'm going to subdivide the whole neck area a bit, just to give me a bit more to work with. And then move this whole area back. And bring out the clay brush so that we can start sculpting this. Again, just going for primary forms here. I'm going to have to inflate the end of the beak here, get a bit more the shape I need. Take the damn standard. And from what I can see here, it looks again as though we want to put a line about here. And then we can start placing the beak. So the jaw comes into about here, and then the actual hard part of the beak can just lands just in front of it. So. And then just over the top of that, we have the beak, the actual opening. Hey, Pat, Dino Time. Hope you had a good weekend. Hey, how's it going, Tom? Yeah, good weekend, thanks. Yeah, busy. Updating social media stuff, looking at old projects, for the art station, cleaning up the art station a little bit as well. So there we go. And then I'm going to take my trim dynamic brush along the edge of that now that I've put that into place. Saw lots of posts from you, yeah. Yes, yeah, lots of posts. Originally I had put individual links to like trailers and stuff from shows that I've worked on over the years. I decided to just put them all into one post because I thought it was cleaner. I just felt it looked cleaner, so. Oh no, what's happened here? Bit of a mess, so let's fix that. Yeah, thanks. I mean, the next thing, I have to make a new version of my showreel. Unfortunately, I mean, just because of how light work has been on the ground, I don't have much new to add to my showreel. The only thing I've been able to get a hold of recently is a few shots from the new Walking with Dinosaurs that I worked on a couple of years back. And I didn't, there's not a huge amount of sequences with the little creature I made in it, so but it'll still get added all the same. So it'll still get added all the same. So I'm just going to now bring this down, and then we have yeah, I very briefly, Tom. Yeah, I only worked on it for a few months, mostly just detailing the dinosaurs, and kind of I roughed out one of the titanosaurs that you see, but someone else will have picked that up after me to do the lion's share of it, I would imagine. So yeah, so I worked on it, but yeah, there's not a huge amount that I did. Yeah, I absolutely love Walking with Dinosaurs. I mean, I grew up with Walking with Dinosaurs. That's the thing. When it first came on, when the first series came on television back in the 90s. Oh no, where's the eyes gone? The eyes have disappeared. There we go. Oh, wait a minute. Why do I have... Oh no, I've got duplicates. What have I done? There we go. Get the eyes out into place. I might, I mean, if I'm doing anything for the stream, I'll probably put that in a separate reel, if I'm honest, Tom. I generally like to try and keep I just like to keep the VFX work in one reel where I can. Before they had feathers, yeah. So, no. Nope, don't want to do that. All right. Need to do a little bit more work here, so as it comes off there, we should have... Oh, Mickey, thank you very much for the follow. Not the follow, sorry, the subscription. Even better. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. So I'm just outlining beak here. And then the nostril kind of sits in there. Still looking a bit rough around the edges, this one, but they always do at this point. You get the eyes. One of those things with, I think with any model I do, I think as soon as you get the eye in, it immediately starts to look like a real creature. Until the eyeball is kind of set and then the shapes are all where you expect them to be, it just looks a bit weird. But I think what I'm going to do here is I am going to do a bit of Sculptors Pro because I can't get any of the detail I need around the eye. There we go, that's better. Now I can start to get a bit sketchier with it. We're going to bring that shape now up to where the crest is. And then we can bring this down towards the section of the beak and the jaw. And then we have the neck section here, which is obviously that more flexible element, similar to a pelican, that we're just going to sculpt in, like so. And it looks as though this is a tricky thing to get the right angle for. This is where I kind of always wish that I had more dinosaur skulls in my collection that I could reference. If anyone knows where I can get a Quetzalcoatlus skull, please do let me know. Even a high quality model will do me. Now, let's start to... Just going to smooth over some of these elements with Sculptors Pro. What that's going to do is it is going to give me more geometry to play with in this area. And the thing is that they've got a bit of a vulture kind of look to them in a lot of the reference that I've got here, in that they do appear to have some feathers running down their neck and onto their body. So I will start thinking about putting that in too. I'm going to reaffirm the opening for the mouth or for the beak. And I know that Zbrush has Lazy Mouse. I don't actually like it that much. I never have. I prefer doing it that way, which isn't always the most accurate, if I'm completely honest with you. But something I always enjoy doing when I'm doing creatures like this is I like adding that little element of inconsistency that you get from doing it by hand, because I think it makes creatures look more organic. because creatures aren't perfect beaks. You know, their beaks aren't going to be completely, immaculate. That's just not realistic. That's not how the world is. So I think it's quite a good idea to add that, keep that element of damage, if you will, or inconsistency to it. Right, so this doesn't look great. So we're going to take the trim dynamic and just carve away some of this element here. And we'll start smoothing things off. Maybe need to do a bit more work on the jaw here. Just to kind of blend that in a bit better. And the ear. And they've got, like I said, they've got that almost turkey vulture kind of feeling to the back of their heads. Okay. So we'll go back in with the trim dynamic and just start cleaning out some of these forms. There we go. And I've got some creature brushes that I can use to add some wrinkles and things like that to it a little bit later. Take a look. We don't have a lot of, turn on Sculptors Pro again, and we'll just give ourselves a little bit more geometry in these places. Turn it back off and smooth things back. There we go. And that's going to give me a little bit more geometry to put in that looks as well. I've messed something up here on the back of the eye. So this has to come round like so. And then that leads back to over the ear, or just over the ear like this. And then the underside of the eye comes round like that. And comes up and again joins this part of the head. Seems to just work its way down and fade away. And then we have the ear under there. And then that's leading around and into some of the shapes underneath the chin. Now we can start really carving these in. Then we'll take a little another shot at the eyes, just to clean them up a bit, and take the just the standard brush. Remember folks, do not sleep on the standard brush in ZBrush. It's there for a reason. what I will do is on the eye, just to help it a bit, I'm going to go into the paintbrush here, go to a drag rectangle, and I'm going to choose alpha 26. I'm going to go into the alpha options, modify, and I'm going to take the blur into the minus. It's not going to do much, but it will sharpen up the alpha just a little bit. And they appear to think that these had amber eyes. Like that. So now I can just, let's like subdivide it a couple of times. There we go. Now we can set this back, and instantly our creature has a bit more life to it because we've given it that eyeball. So now I can take my damn standard again, and I can clean up the beak. Is always going to be an area that needs a sharper touch. Now, something you can do, oh, actually, it's good to know here. If you go into the alpha, you'll notice that sometimes, depending on the brush, your alpha might retain some of the same options. So just be very aware of that, okay? But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go into my brushes here. I'm going to go into environment. No, sorry, my apologies. I'm going to go into hard surface and choose the, oh no, I think I was right. I was right. There it is, orb crack. So I'm going to use the orb crack brush here instead of the damn standard. And that's just going to give me a more hard surface cut along the beak. Lower the intensity. There we go. We're getting somewhere. Looks like a Quetzalcoatlus. Again, folks, I have no idea. I might be really butchering the name. I have no idea. And now I'm just going to take smooth brush over some of the forms and then take the trim dynamic and do the exact same just to take some of the peaks off of them. Back to the damn standard and just take away this smile. Don't want it to look like it's smiling. Ideally. Okay. So now that we've done that, we're going to do a save as and do, just going to say 5. And now we're going to Z-remesh the surface that we've created, reproject our details, and then that's going to allow us to clean up the other forms a lot easier because we're going to have good topology to work with. So oh, good coffee. All right. So to do that, we're going to duplicate the body here. And in there, we're going to go under geometry here. Look for Z-remesher. By default, I always like to leave it on its default settings, at least to begin with. Turn on your wireframe and hit Z-remesher. And we'll just see what it gives us. That's actually not too bad. That's done a pretty good job. There's a couple of areas here that I'm not a huge fan of. It'd be quite good if they were, it looks like he's wearing shoes. I just remembered that we need to connect his feet. So we'll go back to that in a second. Let's just grab the feet and we're going to dynamesh them together. So we'll do merge down. Okay. And this time we're going to dynamesh at a much higher rate so that we get all the detail that we want. So I'm just going to push that to about 500 and then hit dynamesh. Yep, the feet are all intact. And then I can smooth things out. Now, what I will do here is I'm going to mask out the head area, invert that. Sorry, mask out the head, sorry, so that I can go under deformation and I can do a polish. And maybe do a quick polish by features. There we go. Just to polish the surfaces off a little bit. Now we'll do the same as before, is we'll go in and we'll duplicate the body and then we'll Z-remesh it. So under geometry, Z-remesher. And what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to lower the poly count to 2.5. And the way that Z-remesher works is this slider is in thousandths. So at the moment, I'm asking it to target a polygon count of around 2,500 polys. But we also have adaptive on. And what that means is that ZBrush is going to try and adjust the topology amount depending on the surface that it needs so that it doesn't break or lose any of your detail. But I'm lowering it and then I'm going to use the use polypaint option. And what this will do is it's actually going to let me paint with, let me just put that back and then do use polypaint, and I paint with this color here over the head, like so. That's me telling ZBrush, can you make sure that for most of the topology that we have in the Z-remesh, let's put it into the head area because that's the area with the most detail. The rest of the body, we can adapt as needed. So now that I've done that, use polypaints on. I set the color density to 1. It'll change the color, but I'm going to leave it as it is. And then I'm going to hit Z-remesher. Okay, so now if we look at it, there's less here in the body, but most of it's up in the head. So, okay. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to step back in the undo settings here, right? If I step back and I hold down Control and click on my undo slider, it's going to save this history state into memory. Now I can move forward, and now we're going to set up our mesh for to be Z-remeshed. Sorry, not Z-remeshed, for projection. Okay. But before we do that, we're going to UV map it. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and choose Select Lasso, and then I'm going to work my way through and select edge loops on my mesh, like so. So we'll go down to the neck, and then I'm going to do the arms. Make sure they're nice and clean and they're looping all the way around. Do the same for the legs. And we'll do the same for the feet. And then we'll split the wings up as well. Just like this. Okay. So now I can do auto groups. You can see that that's going to split everything up into separate polygroups. Now when I bring back the parts I hid, we can actually go through and leave them in and highlight them and just redo the polygroup for each part, like so. If I need to, I can hide bits until I get the part I want. See, I'm just hiding all of these. I will hide the legs. And do you know what? I think what we'll do, actually, let's just hide this part instead. There we go. I think these can be one polygroup. And then we can do the body as one polygroup. We'll do the same here with the wing bones. And yes, we do need to go in and clean up those wing bones and smooth them out. But we'll do that in a second. Once we do our projection, we can go down to the lower subdivisions and start cleaning up the mesh. So now we have a bunch of polygroups. I'm going to save my model. And then I'm going to go to Z plugin, UV master, turn off symmetry, turn on polygroups. Now ZBrush will look at each polygroup, it will cut it, turn that into a UV island, and you will end up with a really fast UV map. And if we go into UV map here, turn the bump down to 0, morph UV, we get something that looks like that. So ZBrush has a really good UV system for a lot of it, and it does a really good job of unwrapping things if you set the model up properly. However, this is not an ideal way to lay that information out. Those islands could be stacked and adjusted way better. Now you can do that in the current version of ZBrush, and we obviously are going to have a new UV system fairly soon. But for me, I would take this out to a third-party package such as Maya, Blender, Rism, or Rism, however you want to pronounce it. And I would fix my UV islands there and then do any kind of tweaks and adjustments to the UVs there. But this gets you started, okay? This gets you, 75% of the way there. So now that that's done, we still have our image saved in history. So now I can go to morph target, store morph target. That stores the shape of our pterosaur, or pterosaur, not a pterosaur. Oh, that would be amazing. Terry Crews, but as a flying, as a as like a, a pteranodon or a pterodactyl. That would be funny. Anyway, so with that done, it's going to save this state and this kind of size of it, because when I go to geometry and hit divide, the model is going to shrink ever so slightly. And that's not something we really want. We don't want the model to shrink. So we subdivide a few times, then we lower the subdivisions to 1, go back to our morph target, and this is where we can hit the switch button and watch what happens with the model. You'll see a slight change. Okay, see that difference? That shows you how much the smooth will shrink it down. So if you have a model that's been signed off and needs to be a certain size, this is why this is an important thing to do, because you can't have that silhouette changed, all right? So when I switch it over, now I can step up the subdivisions to the top level, delete them, and then hit store morph target again. So now we're exactly back where we were, but we have more subdivisions to work with. And then the last thing to do, go into subtool, into project. I'm going to set that to 0. That was a mistake. Going to set the blur to 0, the mean to 12, and I'm going to hit project history. And what that'll do is it's going to go all the way back to this stage of our undo history and project that onto our model. Okay. And now we have this. I'm actually just going to do fill object. There we go. And now we've got all of our detail back. And we have subdivision surfaces that we can go through, and now we can clean up our mesh a little bit easier. So this is what's going to allow us to go through and really clean up these surfaces. And again, we're going to turn off use tablet so we can keep it nice and consistent. There we go. There's going to still be a few lumps and bumps, but we'll just lower the intensity there and do the same thing again. We'll just smooth that back. That might also be lumps and bumps on there. Yes, it is. Okay, so just now a little bit of extra adjustment just to clean it up. There we go. Take the inflate brush, just lower that, and we'll just clean up anywhere that's not the size it needs to be. There we go. Okay. So we have our characters, we've got our creature's feet. So you can see we've got a little bit more leftover damage from the low res model that's been projected in. So we need to go through and make sure that's all cleaned up so that we can add our own detail in later if we want. Hey, Sudhir, how are you doing? Good to have you here. Thank you for coming in. I'm just going to smooth out some of these elements. And if I want to add in a bit more detail here, we can do that with our standard brush, set it to drag rectangle. Then we can choose something like alpha 60, lower the intensity, and we can start to break up some of the detail along the neck. And if you want to, you can switch this from drag rectangle to something like color spray. Switch to sub and lower that down to something like 8. And then we can start bringing in some extra detail. Do the same with the alpha 7. So remember, we have this weird kind of turkey vulture style detailing. So we can do that by starting to add some rough detail, maybe increase the intensity a bit. Along the beak. And it looks as though as well there's a little bit on the back, but first of all I'm going to switch back to color spray over to alpha 60 and then just bring that same level of detail over the top of the head like so. And it looks as well as though we can probably lower it even more, just give a little bit of detail down the beak. Then we can jump back over to drag rectangle, grab our alpha 7, turn off symmetry, and we can now put some of those lumps and bumps into the back of the head. Lower that intensity. Because I always like little things like this to be quite subtle. I find detail can get a little bit noisy and a bit hard to take sometimes, depending on how much is put in. Then we can go back to symmetry and start adding in our own levels of detail. Just adding in a few extra wrinkles and lumps and bumps. Okay. And then for that fur that's running its way down here, we've got two options. We can either go in with larger fur brushes, or we can use something like this basic fur from Pablander. So I'm going to try a few things here. I'm going to put this really low and turn on the spray stroke. I can very quickly cover the body in fur. And then when we get to lower down, we can maybe switch it to drag rectangle and be a bit more deliberate about where we place it. We're switching back over to the dot stroke, lowering that intensity again, making the brush quite small. And oh, hold on, let's see, we've got some questions here, folks, sorry. I'm studying 3D at the moment and was wondering what you think. Is it better to focus on one thing and specialize, or have a more generous portfolio? I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed lately and not really sure which direction to go. All right. This is a question that crops up all the time, particularly from students that are either, very close to graduating and they're just not sure about where they want to place themselves within the industry. And unfortunately, I don't have a definitive answer for you, because again, it all comes down to, at the end of the day, got to go. Thanks for streaming. No worries, CC. Thanks for coming along. You're never going to have that definitive answer, okay? Because it's so subjective, because it's your own choice at the end of the day. However, when it comes to the industry, depending on where you want to end up, if you want to go into games, if you want to go into VFX and animation, actually, Romina, whereabouts is it? What's your goal? Is the games industry your goal, or is it more visual effects? Because that can determine how to specialize and how you kind of cater yourself. So if you let me know what area of the industry you're hoping or aiming for at the moment, that would make it a bit easier to give you a clearer answer. Could be for the gamers. Okay, so it sounds like you're not sure. So in that regard, if you're unsure as to, it could be the games industry, but you're really more focused on sculpting, right? So for character artists, for example, are very, very, there's a lot of competition in that regard. So if character art is your thing that you want to do, then that's where you specialize. So rather than specializing in, a specific task, as a character artist, for example, you would have to really know a lot of the pipeline. That's where character artists in games really sit. So for example, you're not just expected to model and do UVs. You have to be able to texture. You have to be able to do a little bit of groom, maybe some cloth work, and even some look dev. And the same is happening in the VFX industry as well. There's more of a, in my experience, and right now, there seems to be more of a call for the general side, as in being able to apply yourself to lots of different things, be that modeling, texturing, rigging, that type of thing. However, I don't think that, for me anyway, I think that stretching yourself too thin is unwise. So what I would do, the best advice I can give you for this, learn and understand the whole pipeline. You don't have to know how to work it practically. I'm not saying that you should learn how to rig things if that's not your interest. What I'm saying is learn enough about it so that you understand it to the point of view where if someone's talking to you about it in an industry setting or a studio, that you go, oh, right, I know what you mean. Because the information that you gain from learning about rigging will influence your modeling and your sculpting. The same goes that if you're a rigger, then you should learn about modeling and topology and things as well, because that's going to influence the work that you do as a rigging artist. So learn and focus on the thing you enjoy most. That's my biggest advice. Focus on what you enjoy most, which if that's sculpting, if you wake up and go, all I want to do is sculpt, then that's what you do. But at the same time, dedicate some time of your day, of your week, and learn about the other parts of the industry. Sorry, not the industry. Learn about other parts of the pipeline so that it makes sense to you, so that you can link it all together in the end. And what's good about that is that, or the advantage to doing it is that you can focus on the thing you enjoy. But if you find that there isn't a lot of work in that area, you can easily or more easily pivot into learning something more. So for example, you're not really that interested in texturing. Like myself, if I'm being totally honest, I don't really enjoy the nitty gritty deep texturing stuff. I like doing paint overs and kind of single layer stuff. That's what I've always enjoyed. But that doesn't mean that I don't understand how to do the full gamut of texturing, okay? So what it allows you to do is, say you don't enjoy texturing very much, but a job comes up and they're like, right, we don't have any modelers available. What we're looking for texture artists. Well, you can pivot very easily, and you have less to learn to be able to do that position. So it's having a generalist mindset while focusing on the thing you enjoy most. And that thing that you enjoy most might change as you progress through your career. So basically what I'm saying is it's both. And the biggest issue with the industry is that it changes. So you have to be very aware of what's happening in the industry at any one time to see what the job market's looking for. Because one year they might be looking for generalists. The next year they might be looking for specialists. So that's something that you have to be aware of. And it's what makes it so difficult for students right now. So like I said, in my experience right now in the job market, there seems to be more of a call for generalist artists that can do a lot in a pipeline. But at the same time, occasionally you'll see, no problem, Romina, no problem. But occasionally you will see, you'll see the odd specialist job pop up. So yeah, so what to do? Focus on what you enjoy, but keep enough knowledge in the back of your head for the whole pipeline so that you can pivot and adjust and adapt to the industry as and when you need to, because that is your best skill as an artist, is adaptability to pipelines and changes in the industry. And it's very, very difficult because right now it's changing all the time. And things like AI and generative AI do not help that. They do not help that. That is causing so much upheaval in all the wrong ways, which is a shame, because generative AI, if it had been handled right, could have been a very useful tool for artists. And I'd be actually far more willing to kind of bring it into my own workflows if I felt it wasn't being prepared to replace artists, which is exactly what they're doing. And I don't really care how many times people tell me that's not the case. That's the case, because AI at the moment saves money. And that, at the end of the day, is what companies want to do. They want to save money. And that, at the moment, is the best way for them to do it. I don't think it's going to stay that way, though. I honestly think that AI is going to it's expanding so quickly, and the costs are skyrocketing so quickly that eventually it's going to be too expensive to run AI prompts, and they're going to have to go back to using real people. That might be a little bit of hopium on my part, but that's how I feel it's going to go. So I know nobody asked, but that's my current feeling on AI. I'm not an AI advocate in any way. I despise it. So with that in mind, let us now do a little bit of paint work. But first of all, before we do some paint work, we have to give this guy some wings. That's the whole point, right? And I think we're going to cheat this. But no, I'm glad that was helpful, Romina. Apologies, I am a bit of a rambler. And I also like to make sure that people know exactly where I'm coming from. So I tend to kind of explain things a couple of times. So what I'm going to do here, I think, is, how do I want to do this? Yeah, I'm going to go with a polysphere. I'm going to go in and turn it into a Q-sphere. Same as we did before. And I am going to scale it up, scale it down. And we're going to position this like so. Grab our move brush, and I just need to make sure where I'm attaching this to. Okay, so this is actually going to attach at the leg. So it's actually going to come all the way up. So let's take that to here and to here. There we go. And I'm just going to fill it in like so. If I have to subdivide it, I will. And I know that this comes round like that and goes through. Yep, it goes through like this. So we want something like that. And then it has to come out to the outer wing as well. So we'll get that in place too. And if we have to, we'll use another one. I'm not going to overstretch it if I can't, unless I have to. And I know there's lots of ways you could do this, folks. There's loads of ways you could do this. This is how I've decided to do it for speed. So I want to keep that a little bit on the elbow. And then I want this all to come in like so. And again, another thing to point out here, folks, is that what we're doing with these models, these are what I would consider first pass models. So if someone asked me to make, for example, they said, Pat, I need you to make me a Quetzalcoatl. I'd be like, okie dokie. And I would ask them, do you want it to be wings splayed, like open, or do you want them to be standing in that kind of classic pose that they have? And then from there, I would model something like this. I would spend maybe a half day at most, and block out this, this creature. So I don't want to stretch this up there. So what we'll do is we're going to make another Q sphere. So I will append another sphere and go down to initialize and Q sphere. And there's macros to do this for you if you don't want to do that every time. I'm just doing it to help anyone that is new to ZBrush. Just so you know where these things are. You can't do it fast, so you can't do it slow, then you cannot do it fast. That's been one of my mottos, and it's basically just a way to get people to slow down when they're doing things. Speed will come naturally the more experienced you get. You do not start out being really fast at something. The industry scares me a little these days with all the changes, but we have to adapt. Thanks for the advice and for taking the time to. My pleasure, Romina. My pleasure. Happy to do it. Happy to do it. So there we go. There we go. So you can see how I've cheated here. You can see how I've cheated. And then we're just going to switch back to this one and I'm going to subdivide it again, and then bring that all into the fold. Subdivide this one. And then that's going to let me pull this down here, and I just need to see, oh no, that does look like there's a little bit between there does appear to be a little bit of this between the legs, so we're going to pull that down as well. Pull that into there. And what we'll do here is we'll take this, that's subdivision 4, that's subdivision 2, so we divide that a couple of times, merge down, okay. And then once it's there, we can set it to level 3, delete the upper and lower, and we're going to do a Dynamesh on this. So we'll do Dynamesh. See how heavy that is. It's probably going to be quite heavy, very heavy. So let's lower that. There we go. That looks all right to me. Then we can just go in and smooth this all together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the damn standard brush, turn on my backface mask, and then I'm going to add in where the fold goes. So that's what I was doing here. I was just making a fold to make my life a bit easier. And if I don't like the back section here, oh, that's fine. Turn off auto mask. I can go in with Sculptris Pro and delete that if I want. There we go. Then take my standard brush. There we go. And backface mask. Oh, we're still losing. Oh, there we go. Use tablet. That would help, wouldn't it, folks? There we go. Now we can start adding a bit more realism to that. Move that back into place. There we go. A bit more of the wrinkle. And then it looks as well, it looks like I've messed this up a little bit. So I'm going to pull this out and up. Apparently it goes as far up as the lats, which I guess would make more sense to have that skin going all the way up so that when it opens its wings, there's just every little bit of surface area it can get so that it gets as much airtime as possible. Kind of cool. And can we do the same? I don't think we can. I think we're going to have to do a new one. So one more time, folks. We're going to append. Okay, yeah, I think we're going to be okay for time here, folks. And we'll do Q-sphere again. Scale it up, scale it down like so, subdivide it. We're just going to place it roughly at an angle in between the legs. And then we'll use our symmetry. And we'll do something like this. Subdivide again to get that shape that we need. And then we can just Dynamesh it. Perfect. Bring back the other wing here. We got a little bit more work to do on this. Okay. Move that out. And I think we can start thinking about painting this now. Because again, we've got all the shapes there. Is it perfect in every way? No, it certainly isn't. But we've got enough that we can paint with. So what I'll do is I'm going to take this here and I'm going to mirror it into one subtool, like so. Then I'm going to merge it down with the legs. So we get something that looks like that. Next, I'm going to go to geometry and I'm going to Z-remesh these. Make sure I have symmetry on, hit Z-remesher, and then I'm going to go straight into deformation and I'll just do a quick polish. There we go. No, not much more needed. Maybe a little bit of adjustment where the polish has shrunk the mesh. Subdivide it once or twice. Then I can take, oh, that's why that's not working. Bear with me. There we go. I've got this brush, but it rarely seems to work as I expect it to. So I think I'm going to take it out of my normal rotation for detailing. There we go. So it's not posed in any great way, but I can always move its neck about if I want to at some point. But I want to instead do a quick clear up. Let's have a look at the housekeeping here. So we've got the body, so I'm going to do a new folder and just call that quets. You pop the parts in that I need. Not many. We've got the wing sections, the body itself, and the eyes. So I'm just going to call this wing skin. So, and we'll call that body. We'll just rename this eyes, but lowercase. There we go. And then the rest of it can be put in a new folder called whip. Like so. And we'll do a save. Bring everything back. And now we can start painting it. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick a material. So I'm going to go into Lightbox and under my materials here, I'm going to pick, there's a great material from Marlon Nunez. It says MR Skin Blend material. I'm going to apply that. And then under my settings here, I'm going to turn on mRGB. Make sure the RGB intensity is set to 100 and make sure that the color is white because that's what we want to start with. So I'll just hit fill object for the body and for the wing. Now we've already made the eyes, so I'm not too worried about that. What I wouldn't mind is if I could catch the light on the eye, but sadly, just because of, there we go, I'd have to get the light down to about there to catch that highlight in the eye. And I don't really want that kind of lighting, although it is, well, it's not too bad, but I'd rather have something like this instead. All right. So we know the eye is painted, so we don't need to worry about that. So instead, we're now going to focus on the body. So we're going to take the wings here, and I do have this reference off here. So it looks like we've got like a ready orange. So I'm going to take that, and I'm just going to do fill intensity. I'm actually going to lower the intensity, and then just do fill object. And then I can update that and lower it if I need to. So I can kind of lower it, maybe put a bit of darkness into it. There we go. It's going to give me the color a bit more. And then if I want to, I can add a bit more red, lower the intensity again. And I liken this to taking an airbrush and just doing really like light passes of layering over the model. So I'll do the same for the body here. Already got the white involved. So instead of doing the fill object here, we're going to do just airbrush in the main areas. So I'm going to take my Alpha 8 brush. The most primary color on the head here is red. So again, we're going to something like this. Make sure symmetry is on. I do wish that I had symmetry in real life when I was doing my airbrushing. So I'm just going to do something like this. Take it down to roughly where the fur is and just fill that in. I like this mottling effect. This is something I learned from one of my mentors, Maddie Scott Spencer. This mottling effect for painting. I learned a lot about how I paint in ZBrush from Maddie, actually. I'm just gonna, nice thin layers. You don't necessarily have to cover up all the white. You want some of that white to come through as well anyway. I'm just gonna bring that down the neck. And then the body is like a dark brown. So let's, bit too much, there we go. And then we'll just, again, we're just going to use the same technique, just maybe be a bit more aggressive with it. And then I'm going to change the alpha to alpha 1 to lower that intensity. And just bring that over everything again, just the neck transition. And obviously if you want this to be a stronger color, we can do that. We can knock it back now. And we can start painting in some more of the detail. Like so. Bit of changes, and then we'll maybe do, I've got a little bit of a color change just on the front kind of wrist area. So I'm actually going to take a drag rectangle stroke here, and let's do something like alpha 15. Just drag that out like so. And then I can take this black color or the brown color and just lighten it up a bit. And then I'm going to take my spray stroke and I'm going to take alpha 61 and then increase the RGB intensity. And then I can start working over elements of the fur. To add a quick little bit of variation. Again, I'm not really going for anything amazing or final here. I just want to create a bit of depth. And I've done too much on the neck, so we're going to go back to dot stroke, alpha 1, back to white, and then I'll clean up the edging here on the head. There we go. So make a cleaner line at the top here, and then switch to the drag rectangle and alpha 7 or 8, and just, actually, yeah, let's do 8. And then I can start breaking up the transition like so. Turn off symmetry. Oh. Do the same down here on the fur, if we really want to. Then just to finish off the brown, I'm going to take a much darker color and we're going to spray that down the back. But it's the head that we're really focused on. That's the thing. We really are just wanting to focus on the head for this. And generally, whenever I get work like this, when someone asks me to do this kind of creature or this kind of study, it's normally the head that they're interested in. They don't really, they're not too bothered about the rest. Not initially, not at first. So we're going to take this color here. We go to dot stroke and alpha 1. We'll just fill in the... And if you do a search for Quetzalcoatlus, you will probably find the image I'm referencing. I just don't know what the attribution is on it, so I can't share it on the stream. Like I said, the Scott Hartman stuff, he has a licensing section on his website which outlines how you can use his work. So it's, like he said, it's like free use work. So as he puts it, so it's free use as long as it's educational and non-commercial. If it's not, then you have to ask for you have to request permission and a license. And as he says himself, even though you don't, if you're just using it for educational and all that, that's great and non-commercial, it's still polite to point it out and actually cite him and tell people that you're using his work, which is what I obviously, as I said, came in, used his nomenclature to just, again, show a little bit more respect. So next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to start blocking this blue color, which is really cool. I always love the idea that these kind of creatures are really brightly colored. And this goes around the eye and a little bit back into here. There we go. Now I'm just blocking out the main color here, and then we'll go in and do the same thing we did at the back. And we'll add in just a little bit of mottling to break it up. You do see that at least in male birds. Yes, that's very true. That's why male birds are generally brightly colored. It's like for mating, etc. It's to make them stand out. Okay, now we have drag rectangle stroke. We can start breaking up that color a bit more. Go. And same as we did before, I will probably put a little bit of variation into it, just with some darker hues. Cool, looking pretty cool. Go back to dot stroke, alpha 1. We're going to grab a bit of the white here and just fill in the underside. What was the bird lose its brightly coloured beak once? Oh, I could not tell you, Dennis. I have no idea. Never actually even heard of that, to be honest. So now I'm just taking a bit of white over the underside here, because it looks like it's a bit of a mix of blue and white on the underside. And I'm also going to take a little bit of this color up here. And this is what I was saying earlier about when I like to just, I just like to go in with one layer and just paint. I've always liked painting this way. You know, when I'm in 3D. I always enjoy painting in this way. Take the blue, darken it ever so slightly, and now I'm going to lower the intensity, switch over to a spray stroke with alpha 8, and just work over the top of it. Lightly break it up. And then if you do it even lighter over the back of the red, what will happen is you will get a bit of a purpley hue, exactly as you would expect. Just got to be very, very light about it. And then we'll do the same, kind of coming down here over the neck. And there we go. I'm just going to go back to this again and just up that intensity and really just fill the beak in here. Switch to a dot stroke and a sharp alpha. There we go, that's a bit better. And I think as well, we need to do a little bit more to this. I'm going to take the red, lighter red here, switch over to a spray stroke and switch over to alpha 8 and really lower that. And then take off the symmetry and just hope that this actually works the way I'm hoping. Okay, yeah, that's looking okay. Again, just a bit more of variation and a breakup. And then we'll do occlusion. So you can see that with occlusion, that looks kind of cool. So what we'll do in that regard is we're going to do save next. And we're going to go into the masking tab here. How are we doing for time? Okay, we are almost out of time, folks. We're almost out of time. So we're going to go quickly into masking here. Scroll down and do mask by cavity. In fact, I'm actually going to undo that and I'm just going to adjust the intensity and increase the blur. Okay, perfect. Soften it ever so slightly. There we go. Now I'm going to take a low intensity, I take a dark color. So in this case, I'm going to take a dark gray. I'm going to go to masking and turn off view mask. So now I can watch as I fill in the shapes. Ever so slight, there we go. Just a bit, not much. And then I'll take the white again, turn off the mask and lower it down to like 1 or 2. And then just fill in the whole object with a bit of white. And there we go. All right, folks. So we now have a Quetzalcoatlus that we've sculpted in a couple of hours. And we've done a quick paint job on it as well. I'm just going to go into my AO here and reduce the intensity there. There we go. And can maybe go into the material type and increase the... I need to put on render properties and turn on wax preview. Just going to give the creature a little bit of a more fleshy look. And let's go into the lighting. Turn off the main light, turn on the secondary. Then we can turn this into a rim light, like so. Let's change the color, something warm. And I'm going to increase the intensity quite a bit and then just adjust it so we get just the really sharp rim. Then we can go back to our main light, turn that on, and that just makes it look a little bit better. And if we do a BPR render, we get something that looks like that. Personally, I've always found that I prefer the canvas look in Zbrush than their BPR render, but there we go. All right, folks. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to bring up the rest of the stream options for this week. Let's just bring that together. There we go. Bear with me. What's that? All right, folks. Okay. Well, folks, thank you all very much for spending the afternoon with me as we worked our way through creating our Quetzalcoatlus. Um, it's been fun. It's been a really great, it's been a fun one to work on. And I'm glad that we managed to get through this in one session. So on Friday, we're going to be moving on to the letter R, and we're going to be making either a raccoon or a raven. I haven't quite decided yet. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm not sure yet, but we will be making either a raccoon or a raven, one of those two. However, if you are looking for other streaming this week, as you can see on the screen, tomorrow we have Heather. She's going to be streaming same time at 1 p.m. UTC. On Wednesday, 9 o'clock UTC, we have Holly Watt. And on Wednesday evening, we have Peter Recampo. Then we continue on Thursday with Paige Imperial doing some animation. And then I'll be streaming again on Friday at 1 p.m. UTC. And we round out the week with Andre, who is going to be doing his ZBrush and chill on the Saturday morning. And that's 6 a.m. UTC. So that's an early one, folks. So just be, so you have to kind of set your alarms for that one if you want to catch it. However, if you miss any of our live streams, you can check them out on the YouTube channel where they will be, they are recorded and you can go back and watch them. And if you want to find out any more about what Firestorm Studios has to offer, please be sure to come along and join our Discord, and you'll find all the links to that under this video. And with that in mind, folks, I will see you all at the end of the week. I hope that you enjoy. I hope you enjoy your week. I hope it's a good one. I hope it's a fast one. And until then, take care and bye for now.